Hey everybody, this is Jordan back again with PictureMonk.com, and welcome to the 24th episode of the PictureMonk podcast. This is Jordan from PictureMonk.com, and in this podcast, I basically want to do a little bit of news, just a couple articles that I found, and also kind of go on a mini rant. And this has to do not only with a question that came in from one of the listeners in Oklahoma City, but it has to do with real estate photography. And now I know I talked about real estate photography on one of my previous podcasts, but I kind of want to touch a little bit more of it just to help this guy out. So let's go ahead and get into some news topics. And the first thing I want to talk about is the Hubble Space Telescope celebrating its 25th anniversary this week. On the news article, I was reading about it, and it said, it kind of gave a brief history of the Hubble Space Telescope, where it went up on the Discovery spaceship, and it was, implemented back in 1990. And so it kind of celebrated its 25th anniversary by taking pictures of a really cool fireworks sort of star cluster out there, and it looks like it's a pretty cool image, just like all the ones that Hubble takes pictures of. All the Hubble space images are really cool. So I wanted to talk about that and just kind of give a little shout out to that, just because I love looking at those deep space images. They're just really, really neat. Kind of makes me want to try to get more into astrophotography, but takes a little bit of equipment to get there. You can do a little bit of stuff, obviously, without having huge telescopes and stuff like that. But it's still fun to look at that kind of stuff. And also, a little known fact that I actually read about the Hubble Space Telescope is that it can't take images in color, not necessarily color like we see it. What I was reading about, and I actually saw a small 30-second video, was it takes pictures, and when the images come back and they get combined to make this high-res image, that they have editors that go in, and if the image detects that a certain area is made up of a certain type of gas or something like that, then that gas usually gets a certain color. And that, the stars get a certain color, and anything like that. And that color is assigned to the image, and then that makes the beautiful image that it takes. I just thought that was a really cool little stat. It's crazy that the Hubble Space Telescope can't take color, because that thing's a monster. but yeah, it's kind of cool that you have to have actually editors go in and make sure that they look like they're supposed to, with what it took a picture of. So I thought that was really neat, and I'll just put some images up there on the website at PictureMonk.com/PMP024, and you can check some of those out, and just kind of I'll leave a link to the article so you can see all the rest of the images there. All right, so the next little article I want to talk about, and it's not really an article, but it's a announcement from Adobe, and I kind of miss it. I feel like I always miss the boat every week when a special announcement goes out or a release goes out. Feels like I'm always like a couple days behind, but Lightroom 6/Lightroom CC came out, and it was a major release. I think it was the first release of Lightroom since they didn't do the beta program. And the beta program is really, they give it out to real world users so they can test it and get all the bugs worked out, that sort of thing. And I upgraded my machine, and I did a couple edits on it today. And I don't know if you guys, everybody else there is having this problem if you've updated to Lightroom 6 or Lightroom CC. It is extremely buggy. They should have kept that beta program, because it's not working too well for me. I found that even something simple as, for example, I would go in to do a lining. So I would try to correct the horizon line on a couple of my images. Every time I would go into the crop tool to get the straighten tool there, it would just completely quit. Every time. I've tried it 3 times, tried it with 2 different images, and it still does it the same time, or the same thing. It still quits every time. That happens, and there's a couple other things that happen, but I've had it quit way more, quit on its own way more than Lightroom 5 had. So I really hope they release a new patch for that to get it out, to get out all the bugs, because it's almost hard to work. And they say it's supposed to be faster, but it's not. It's actually probably worse than Lightroom 5. And it, obviously if you downloaded it and haven't had a problem, then, maybe something I'm doing. But, in the comments of the show notes today, go ahead and leave if you're having a problem. And so I can see how widespread this is. Maybe I got to re-download it and reinstall it. I don't know. But yeah, Lightroom 6 was released, or Lightroom CC. They're basically the same thing. Just Lightroom 6 has different billing options, obviously. But Lightroom CC was released, and it was released with a couple new features. And the two that I'm really excited about are the panorama feature built in to Lightroom, as well as the HDR, because I was kind of like, well, it's going to be the same thing as Photoshop, the Pro HDR on Photoshop. But it's not. It's actually, from what I've tested out and what I've played with, it's actually more of a smarter HDR. It's not what you would expect with maybe Photomatic. It's not like that. It's actually really cool. It gives you way more detail. I actually did a video a while back of a 32-bit HDR, how to make and edit a 32-bit HDR. It kind of leads towards more of that in that area, because it gives you that much more detail to play with. So obviously you got to have the right images for it, and I've actually messed around with it, and I've seen that even if you were to take a negative 2 exposure and a positive 2 exposure, or 2-stop difference between that, even if you don't have the neutral exposure, you still get a whole lot of data to play with. It may sound counterintuitive, because usually in HDR you think of taking 3 images, but it actually works out pretty well. So if you don't have all 3 images, or you have 5, 7, 8, however many images you have, you're going to have so much detail to play with. So I thought that was a really neat feature to add finally, to have it baked into Lightroom. And the other feature that they added was the face recognition. Don't plan on using that as much. Number one, because I don't have a whole lot of photos for portraits and stuff like that in my library. I mainly I used to use iPhoto for that, just because it had a really good facial recognition feature. So the new Photos app may have the same sort of tools for that, but I'm not going to really use that as much. But again, panorama and HDR are going to be pretty cool features to play around with. So make sure you're subscribed to the PictureMonk YouTube channel, because I'm actually going to make a couple more videos regarding both those features. So head on over to picturemonk.com/YouTube, and that will take you over to my YouTube channel, and you can subscribe there. So, and I also have a special deal coming up, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be a really good deal in kind of celebration for the Lightroom release last week. So stay tuned for that. You listen to the end of the episode, maybe I could entice you to stick around. So let's go ahead and get to the major topic for this episode. All right, so the rant that I was talking about actually has to do with a email that came in from a Guy Simmons from Oklahoma City, and he kind of wrote me a really long email, because it was about 2 or 3 paragraphs, not really long, but he basically had a whole lot of questions. So I thought, instead of just punching them out one by one, I will just kind of briefly scan over them and kind of give a roundabout answer of what he's needing here. So, but basically, if I read it right, Guy is doing his very first real estate photography shoot, and I believe he said it was within the week. And he wanted to get some tips for that, to kind of know what to cover, and what angles to use, equipment to use, that sort of thing. So I've done a lot of real estate photography in the past, mainly for my work, as you may have known. But most of the things you need to know are all really the same. So what it is he said he's going to be doing the real estate shoot, and he needs to know, what process he should start with, and as far as getting the photos. It kind of depends on what kind of house you're shooting. Obviously, if it's a larger house, You may want to spend a little bit more time walking around, getting used to the area. Maybe just going to a room, standing in it for a little bit, and playing around with some camera angles, that sort of thing, to try to get the best way to convey the space. But it's going to be pretty simple to do as far as just getting the photos. So you basically just going to walk around, hit every room, and try to get a few angles for every room. I try to do that, even though I know they're only going to use one angle for each room most of the time. I try to get a couple angles from every room, and here's an example of one thing that really kind of helps out is if you know they're only going to use one angle. Let's say for a bedroom example. You need to you want to try to shoot the bed pointing into the attached bathroom, that kind of thing. That will kind of give a dual purpose photo. I usually try to get one of those, even if I know they might not use it. I still want to get one of those to still convey the space. And then obviously get a bathroom photo separate. That's kind of one tip I would throw out there. Another equipment sort of question that he asked was he had a 18-55 kit lens, and he also has a 10-22, I think, wide angle lens. Good on you for getting a wide angle lens. I know you probably that's one thing that you really need to know is to have a wide angle lens. But yeah, if you're going to shoot with a wide angle lens, that's perfect. You definitely want to do that, but just be very, very cautious of your lines, especially with a wide angle lens. You might look in the camera and you might think all your lines are straight, but then you get in post and you have just a really bad Dutch angle on all your photos, and you got to do some major warping and auto aligning and stuff like that to correct it. So one thing that I tried to do is, if your camera has live view, he didn't say what kind of camera he had, but if your camera has live view on it, maybe, line it up with, looking through the viewfinder, and try to line it up that way, and then pop on live view without touching anything else, and just see how it looks on the back of the screen. And take your time with that, because you really want to make sure your lines are straight. One thing that I have learned in shooting the last real estate shot that I did was, you don't necessarily have to go wide angle all the time. There was actually one image of a sort of a lobby, I guess. It resembled more of a living room, but it was a lobby in the clubhouse. And so I lined up the shot, and I went all the way wide with my 17-40 on my Canon 6D, and I went all the way wide, and it took the photo, but it was just too wide. I wanted to get as much as I could in there, but it was just way too wide. So I ended up popping on my 24 to 105 and just took it with the 24 end, and it actually turned out pretty well. I was still wide enough to get most of the stuff that I wanted to, but my lines were extremely on point. They were straight as they could be. So that's one thing I would try to play around with if you have time to do it. Most of the time, I guess, if you're shooting for a real estate agent or something like that, unless they know you for sure, you know them as maybe a family friend or something, they're going to hang around the house with you. Even if it's an empty house, they're going to hang around the house with you. So if you have the time and, you can talk them into staying a little bit, make sure you get the good shots and make sure you line them up correctly. This is all stemming from sort of, one of the last shots that I did. I took photos. This is, I guess, where my rant comes in. I took photos of an apartment community that was before some renovations that they did. And so I just had to go out there, grab a couple photos of, all the amenities and the model and all that kind of stuff. Had to get all that. And I got the photos, came back, edited them all. They wanted them as soon as possible, like always. I edited them all, put them up on the site. They were great with them. They loved them. Perfect. They showed exactly what they needed to. So then recently, actually this past week, I was actually free to go back out there again because they had renovations done that were completed, mostly completed. So they, I was free to go out there, but they ended up sending another guy that is actually part of our training program. They sent him out there because, number one, he lives more out that way, and he has a camera. That was it. that was the only reason they was sent out there. There's a lot of people that have a camera, and there's a lot of people that live out that way. So I guess everybody was available to go out that way too. So they sent him out there. I walked in the next day, and then they were like, yeah, he's out there taking photos. And I was like, well, okay, well, good for him. And what was really bad for him is that the owner of that apartment community is probably as picky as you can get, and he hates everything. He's one of those people that just hates everything. So he went out there, he took the photos, and he got them back, and he started editing them, and he sent them to the owner for his approval. And the owner sent back a large amount of emails saying, don't use this one, hate this one, change this on this, Photoshop this thing out, that sort of thing. And my first thought, honestly, that went through my head was, man, I'm glad I didn't go out there, just because I would have to deal with all that. But the guy said, he said, even the guy that went out there, he was like, I'm not a professional photographer, so I'm not exactly sure why they sent me out there, but they sent me out there. So, and I looked at the photos he did, and the only thing he did as far as editing goes is he did shoot HDR. However, he shot, actually, he did not shoot in HDR. He shot in auto mode, and so he green box mode right on the camera, and then he made three different versions. So he did a pseudo HDR. So he made a underexposed and overexposed, and he took the one that came off the camera and threw those into Photomatics, and that created his HDR, and then he was done. That's all he did. So naturally, interior photos were very noisy because it was on the auto mode, and the noise was just everywhere. And when you kind of layer more HDRs on each other, the noise is just going to be crazy, especially if you have higher noise, shoot with a higher ISO. So you're going to have more noise. So he did that, and he didn't do any sharpening. He didn't do any, lens correction, that sort of thing. He didn't do any of that. And the guy came back, and he was like, there's TVs in the fitness center that need to have the images cropped off of them and put something in its place. There's a reflection and a light that needs to be taken out. And another stupid one that I just kind of laughed at was, there's a baseboard there that hasn't been painted, but it needs to be painted. So can you paint that in Photoshop? And it's basically comes down to ignorance on both parts, honestly. The guy that went out there to take photos, he should have known that he wasn't capable of doing this, because he actually ended up coming up to me to help him Photoshop out some of the stuff and change some of the stuff. He didn't even know how to take a regular rectangle in Photoshop, pop it over the TV, put a gradient on it to act like it's a TV that's just turned off. Didn't know how to do that. He had to come to me to ask how to do that stuff. When in reality, he should have just turned the TV off. That would have helped everything. So, it's just stuff like that. And I don't blame him for doing that. I do wish he would have, said, I can't handle this. But, he did what he did. And now, it actually ended up coming off the day after that, the day after he took the photos. One of the apartment, advertisers in the area sent their photographer out there to get photos. So it ended up wasting a little bit of my time and his time and the owner's time, just for that one day of stuff that he needed to go out there and do. So, I guess my rant is for that. If you can't handle something, and this goes for all photography, like if you were asked to do a wedding and you're like, yeah, that's an easy $1,000 or something like that. And then you honestly have that, oh crap moment that, I don't know how to do anything in regards to weddings. Then don't do it. Say you can't do it. It's okay to say you can't do it. I've turned down 2 weddings so far. I shot 2 weddings, and I turned down 2 weddings because I knew after those 2 weddings, I wasn't prepared to do, a whole bunch of weddings. I wasn't prepared. I didn't have the equipment. I didn't have the, posing styles. I didn't have any of that. So, just say you can't do it. It's okay. You're going to be fine. And then this also comes on a small little tangent off of the story is, we just acquired, my job actually just acquired 3 apartment communities, I believe, out in the Charlotte area of North Carolina. and they want to go out there and get photos of the communities because they're really nice, don't need a lot of renovations, they're pretty much done. And so they said, when's our professional photographer going to go out there? Meaning me. They call me that just because I normally go out and take the photos. And I said, well, I mean, it's 3 hours away. If I'm going to do this right, I want to stay out there at least one night because they want to get, twilight shots of the, with the lights on and all that kind of stuff. You can't do that, especially for the 3 plus one that we already have out there, the 4 communities that we have out there. You can't just do that all in one day. So I need to stay out there to do that. I can do 2 communities each day and then head back and be back in 2 days. So that's how I would prefer to do it. It makes more sense. If you want me to run around and get 4 communities and twilight shots, that's not possible. But you want me to do that, I need to stay out there. And so they said, maybe we'll just call somebody out there in the area. Let's spend the $3,000 per community to get really nice photos. I probably had this weird look on my face because I'm like, you're going to spend $3,000 because that's what some people do charge. Real estate photographers, the high-end ones, they will charge something like that plus more. $3,000 to go out there and photograph all that stuff when I can do it in 2 days, and you're paying me, but you're not paying me $3,000 to go out there. It just blows my mind that they would rather do that than send me out there. And it's not me just wanting to get out of work to go out there because honestly it is work, but it's not that. It's the fact that I can't give them the importance of how good photography is, and they want to pay for it, but then they're like, well, we'll pay whatever. But it doesn't work like that. Photography is good, but you get what you pay for, but they're paying way too much. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Wow, I didn't think I would go off on that major of a rant, but that's what it is. So and back to guys' questions. So yeah, switch between your gear as far as the 24, or in the 24 range that you have for your kit lens. Definitely try out the 10 millimeter. Make sure you take a tripod with you. And another small tip, if you have a leveler, this goes back to getting your photo straight. If you have like a regular wall level for your, if you're like hanging photos or stuff, put that in your camera bag. And then that way, when you get to set up your tripod real quick, just pop that on top and just make sure it's level. A lot of people do that. I actually have a bubble level that is for my hot shoe on my camera that I use. But that's just, if you have one, it's a cheaper way of doing that. So you don't need to go out and buy something for that. And another tip, I guess the last question he asked is should I shoot HDR or should I just do one image? Normally what I do is when I go out, I will shoot HDR. I won't do HDR as far as what most people say HDR is, but I will take a 3 bracketed sequence for the photos of each thing I take a photo of. And the reason why I do that is just because I want to have some extra information if I do need it. Most of the time I don't. Most of the time I just pull the overexposed because I tend to expose to the right. Most of the time I take the overexposed and just edit that. I don't hardly ever go into the other two, but if I need them, they're there. All they're going to do is take up space on my computer, and I'll eventually delete them. That's it. So that's what I would do, and I found that helps out a lot, just because you kind of know that you have a small backup if something does happen. And I also try to photograph a couple, the different angles, but I'll try to photograph maybe, I'll take the 3 bracket of a scene, and then I'll try to do another 3 bracket of a scene, make sure the focus is right, that sort of thing. So it's just all a matter of playing around with it to get the feel of taking photos for interior stuff. As far as the angles go, that's another thing he asked. Is there a certain angle? It's just, whatever looks good to you as far as your eye. Obviously, like for kitchens, you want to make sure you show the counter, but not too much of the counter. Depending on how tall you are, I'm a short little dude. Depending on how tall you are, I try to do it chest level for me. So if you're taller, it's going to be a little bit lower. But that sort of thing, I try to do that. So So I think I answered all your questions, Guy. There are a few more questions that I haven't answered, but I think I'm going to save that for another podcast, maybe next week's podcast, and then I'll run through those. So if you did send in a question, I will get to it. Guy wrote a really long answer, and I wanted to make sure I talked to him about it. So that's about it for the main topic, and thanks for suffering through that rant with me. I really do appreciate it. But for the last thing I want to touch on before we get off of here is the back to the Lightroom thing. In celebration for Lightroom, I want to offer a very, very, very good deal for you guys. As you might know, I have my Lightroom presets that I did, 81 presets that covers a lot of cool little styles that you can apply to some of your photos to kind of give you a good editing strategy. And so they are currently on sale for, I think it's $38.99 for all 81. But for this deal, I'm actually going to knock it down to $9.99. And act now and you'll get a free something, that whole stupid thing. But $9.99 and you can get all 81. If you want to check that out, go to PictureMonk.com/LRDeal. So LRDEAL. And I'm not going to do a coupon code or anything. I'm just going to change the price, and it'll be like that for a week. So I'm releasing this on April 28th, and so it'll be available till midnight on May 5th. So head on over to PictureMonk.com/LRDeal before May 5th, and you can get all 81 presets for $9.99, and you can play with them and have fun with them. I really do still use them. Obviously, I play around with them a lot just to kind of get the inspiration going, that sort of thing. So I appreciate you guys checking that out, and I appreciate you guys listening, commenting, rating, subscribing, saying hi, all that stuff. I appreciate that a lot. So thanks again, guys. This has been Jordan with PictureMonk.com, and I will see you guys in the next podcast.